an abrupt end to the frickin' music. My goodness. You'd think I'd be able to figure it out after all this time. How do, everyone? It's nice to see everyone here. Really is. I haven't done a stream for snow ever, so this is history for me. I feel pretty. It's really interesting, especially with this entire event. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all again. Nice to see you all. First things first, I just want to say, this event is really interesting, and the reason why I say that is because all the models are saying one thing, but my heart is saying another, and the knowledge that I have of knowing the model's bias or whatever is starting to kind of fade in, and it's really kind of just, it's shaky. And it's really hard to forecast this event. It's basically one of those things where what can go wrong will go wrong, and just a little change in the temperature can go a long way, especially since this event isn't just about snow. You guys can also get a plethora amount of freezing rain. If we take a look at the Euro model real quickly, we can show you all that the freezing rain is all across the Shenandoah Valley. It extends all the way down through the Appalachians into North Carolina, and you can also get some freezing rain up into Pennsylvania. So it's crazy right now. I don't exactly know if the models know what they're doing, but it's really crazy. And there are some other models that are just losing their mind. But let's go into just the analysis of this entire event. Let's go to the GFS here, because the GFS actually, I think, gets this event relatively spot on, besides the fact of how cold it is. But if we go into just the regular multi-parameter and the precip type, we can show you all what you all can expect of this. So, low pressure develops from the south. It's currently in Oklahoma right now. As it continues to move on through, it will bring some gusty winds across the board. Not right now. Police! Oh boy. Police! Help! Already having... Help! Police! Help! Help! Police!
Nate Checked-ms.
I will. $2 super chat from Lil Rocky. Thank you, my friend. I really do appreciate it. I think that's Mason. I appreciate it. Thank you. So if we take a look, you can see this low pressure starts to develop. And by the time it gets to around midnight on Wednesday, you can see that the rain and freezing rain is starting to kind of collect. Early morning, it starts to gather itself, and by 10 o'clock, it really starts to precipitate in the southern Appalachians. As it continues to move along, that's when the heaviest amount of snowfall towards the evening, Wednesday, around, I'd say, 4 o'clock. That's when it starts to get pretty dicey. This is what I like to call, and what other people in, or at least I'm stealing this from NFL Red Zone, if any of you have seen that. This is what I like to call the witching hour, where temperatures determine practically everything. You see this line right here that determines the green is the rain, the blue is the snow, the pink is the freezing rain. You see how it's a sharp cutoff, and it goes from rain to snow, and around the Maryland and Delmarva areas into New Jersey and Pennsylvania? That right there can shift. And it can also include bits and bobs of freezing rain and sleet. But if it shifts, then the models are wrong and the predictions are incorrect, and it can impact other people, which is the reason why it's very, very tough to forecast, especially with snow. It's kind of the reason why, if you guys paid attention to my YouTube posts, I said in the beginning that I really don't think there's a lot of YouTubers on YouTube that can accurately predict snowfall. I stand by that. I include myself in that because I suck at snow forecasting. Although I'm getting better. I'm trying to get better. I've contacted a bunch of college students. I've maybe talked to a meteorologist or two that I know on Discord. And I've just been trying to, figure out how to try and forecast this as best as possible. And I'm starting to actually kind of like it, mainly because trying to get something perfect along the lines of forecasting is a thrill. The mindset that people have, it's kind of messed up, but it's definitely something that I can easily get hooked on. And in this case, snow, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I like forecasting snow better than hurricanes, because hurricanes, I don't know, it's just not legit. What the hell is that? Well, anyways, as it continues to move along, that's when you can kind of see how everything starts to congregate in the Northeast. And it's really one of those things to where, as I mentioned before, depending upon where this low goes, depending upon, where it shifts, will the temperatures go up and down? Will it move from side to side? It's very, very interesting. Personally, I think the models are being a little bit too cold biased, in which I think that the warmer air can actually get further into places like Long Island, along the coast of New Jersey, maybe further up into, oh geez, Ruff! Ruff! Thank you for the subscription! Appreciate it! That's where it can possibly get a bit warmer, but then, if it's, not too warm and it's actually able to create more moisture, then you can get more snow in specific areas. So it's really, really just kind of strange to try and forecast this in advance. What have you missed, Matt? Nothing really too much besides this event is so strange. It's so weird. It's so hard to forecast. So, as it continues to move along, this is around midnight Thursday when snow starts to be sporadic in the Northeast. You can see the low pressure continues to stay offshore, doesn't make it all the way up to Massachusetts and Cape Cod up into New England. But as it continues to move on through, you can kind of see how the residual effects start to impact the Northeast, but not as much. So I'm going to use the GFS snow totals real quickly, because I feel like they can somewhat accurately describe the amounts of snow in the Northeast. And you can kind of see how my forecasts later, you'll see the snow totals. You'll see how that actually is derived off of the GFS just a bit. So, real quickly, let's go into the 2-day snowfall. And you can see, look at this, GFS already predicting a lot of snow across the board, especially in Pennsylvania. If you're in the higher elevations, you can expect snowfall amounts higher than this, mainly because it's just colder up in the atmosphere around you. I feel like that's kind of common knowledge, but to reiterate, that's definitely a thing, especially since as you get closer and closer towards the east, the snow totals might actually increase further and further than what you may expect. Mainly because there's more moisture closer and closer to the coast. But still something to keep in mind. And you'll actually see that in my predictions as to how it gets closer and closer to the coast. The snow totals actually kind of increase. another thing, do you mind? Just go away. Trying to do something here. Anyways, sorry, it's my little brother. Um, but you can kind of see how snow totals can get up to 20 inches, yeah, and like north central PA. You can get further down, closer to the mid Atlantic, around DC Baltimore areas. You can kind of see how it veers off between snow and no snow. That's the reason why I'm really, really interested to see as to what happens in the coming day, as to whether or not the warm temperatures will actually be able to determine as to whether or not Baltimore gets 8 inches, or DC gets nothing, or Baltimore gets nothing. You know, it's very, very strange, to say the least. So, one thing that I can say for sure is that if you live in the higher elevations, especially in Pennsylvania, moving into northern New Jersey and southern New York, you guys will definitely be able to see a good amount of snowfall. Now, the GFS doesn't actually show this, in which this is the part where I kind of disagree with the GFS, but the areas around places north of Trenton actually have lower amounts of snowfall. You can see how it's around 11 inches at minimum. Actually, I'll go to the state real quickly. U.S. states. Go down to Pennsylvania. There we go. So you can kind of see how it's around 11 inches and maybe even less in some spots. That's the only part that I don't actually agree with on the GFS. Mainly because I feel like it'll actually still be relatively moist and it'll get into those areas, even though the Delaware River goes and winds its way up around. It still, I believe, actually has an opportunity to get some sort of moisture and eject through those areas. Now, the one thing I do agree with the GFS that I am making myself clear upon is that if I move over to New York real quickly, you can see this kind of dip down here. Sure, you can see in the higher elevations up here. I think the GFS is now starting to take into account the warmer temperatures. And actually, this is exactly right here. This is exactly what I predicted this morning. So I guess I'm on par with the Matthew screw off. I guess I'm exactly on par with the 12Z GFS and what I was originally forecasting. I just didn't account for the warmer temperatures. But places like Long Island, they're actually getting their snow totals starting to recede due to the warmer air. And I expect that to actually recede more and more and congregate with more snow totals along the coast, like Connecticut, Rhode Island, maybe further east or further west. And it's honestly depends, but you can also see how the moisture is starting to return further north, but you can also see that it is in catastrophic numbers as much as models like the NAM or the Euro or the Canadian says, mainly because of this dry air that's sitting over New York and the Northeast at the moment that will kind of infringe on the amount of snow that you will all get. So I personally believe that that will actually impact you all, mainly with the amount of snow that you get. Not as much as areas in Pennsylvania that will get, but still, people up there in the Northeast and New England will definitely get some heavier amounts of snow, in my opinion. Let's quickly take a look at the NAM. And I was just comparing model runs. I was making this prediction last night. It takes me 3 hours, surprisingly. I don't know why it takes me 3 hours, but it takes me 3 hours to actually figure out which areas I think will get snow and which areas won't. But I'm using all sorts of models. The NAM, I feel like, oversaturates this event. And what I mean by oversaturates is it puts off more moisture than it actually is. And the NAM typically does that. You see that in severe weather. You know how, in some instances where we call the NAM crazy in our severe weather live streams, and how it overproduces in some events. I definitely see that in this event, whether it's the amounts of freezing rain or the actual amounts of snow that you all can get. And actually, I'll show you all what I mean here. Let's do just 10-to-1 ratio, just real quickly. Oh, it actually tuned it down. Look at that. You guys want to see what I was looking at last night? I'll pull up the 0Z for you, and it shows 20. It's almost 2 feet across the board, all the way into southern parts of New York and north of New York, New York City and stuff like that. This is actually kind of the reason why I do partially agree with the NAM on this and saying that this particular area, where New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey meets at its borders, I actually agree with the amount of snowfall that is around there, give or take, but it's mainly one of those things to where it's really, really too moist. I will say the NAM does account for some sort of warmer air, more or less in the mid-Atlantic, but not as much in the Northeast. But it's still kind of got a similar idea as to what I'm thinking as to amounts of snow around DC and Baltimore. And that brings up the question before with some of these models. Will places like Baltimore get as much snow as they're forecasted? Will places like DC not even get any snow? Will places like Philadelphia even have a chance at snow? Or how much will they get as much as some of the forecasters have predicted? It's really interesting to see, especially since depending upon where the low pressure goes and where it veers off can determine as to how much snow you can get. So that is the big thing right here that everyone should know, is that nothing is set in stone and that you should be prepared for the worst regardless of what people are saying. Let's see. Is the storm going south? It doesn't particularly look like it's going south. It has a northeast trajectory, so it should be passing through places like Georgia, Georgia in the deep south, actually, earlier than this. If we go back to the multi-precip here and we go to the east, we can show you all real quickly that, by the way, the NAM 12K is just the regular NAM for pivotal weather, so just if you guys want to know that, it's just the regular NAM. You can see how the storm actually kind of ejects through places like Georgia and the deep south by early morning Wednesday, and it starts a precip with freezing rain across the board in Virginia. So something to keep in mind with all of that. Let's see. One thing I do want to talk about real quickly, and this is probably the hardest thing to forecast for any weather forecaster who's trying to do winter weather, is freezing rain. And freezing rain is so hard, mainly because of what I mentioned before. It fluctuates in temperature, and if it's too cold, too warm, it doesn't happen at all, or it happens a lot, or it just turns into snow. It's very, very difficult, but one thing that I can confirm is that there will be freezing rain. And the reason being is because if I actually go real quickly, I gotta clear most of my tabs. Sheesh. I don't need that for now. If I clear most of my tabs, I can pull up pivotal weather real quickly, and I can show you all a sounding of what the NAM says. And the NAM, as I mentioned before, I kind of agree with how they're approaching the mid-Atlantic. But with freezing rain, it's very difficult to forecast unless if you have a certain condition. And in this case, I'll take a sounding right here and show you all. This is freezing rain and or sleet. This sounding doesn't really show you a whole lot, but if you really dissect it, it shows you a bunch, a lot of things. So one thing that I do want to pay attention to is these numbers down below this skew T chart. This right here is called a skew T chart. It tells you the temperature with elevation. These numbers right here is the temperature in Celsius. So if you want to do conversions in Celsius, you can, but the main thing that you have to realize is that 0 degrees Celsius is equal to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. If you take a look, this line right here follows up. This is the 0 degrees Celsius line, this blue line right here. So keep in mind, with height, these lines are moving over and under the freezing layer, the freezing line. If you notice here, it actually goes over and becomes warmer than 32 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning that there could be some precipitation that originally forms as rain. But then as it continues to fall further down, you can see how it turns cold again, and then the rain either freezes or turns into sleet. And that's kind of the reason why it's so difficult, because if this ends up being warmer than it actually is, and say this is right at the freezing line, then you could probably just straight up get rain. You guys won't get any sort of freezing precipitation. But if it's actually colder, then it can turn into snow. So it's really hard to say what areas get what, especially since it's really it determines it's determined based off of the temperature across the board in these areas. So, and especially since everyone knows the models aren't perfect, so they have their own flaws, and in this case most models have some sort of cold bias, whether it's an extreme cold bias or a slight cold bias. Doesn't really matter all too much, especially if it's freezing rain. So it can fluctuate within that instance. That is actually crazy, Brendan. That's a threat right there. Freezing rain and or sleet. But yeah, the reason why this is causing this, and as most of you have noticed, is basically there is just this warm air inversion, this advection, that has just plowed on through and has made it warmer up in those areas. So around 800 to 700 millibars, that is around the area in which there could be some amounts of warm air, creating freezing rain and sleet. How much snow for Hanover, PA, York County, Pennsylvania? Well, I'll show you guys. I might as well show you guys my total snow totals, because I basically talked about the timings and all that, what you all could see. But I'm going to show you two things. I'm going to show you the original snow forecast that I have here. And then I'm going to show you the one with ice. Now, the one with ice isn't as large, but, well, it isn't as detailed, but it still has the snow totals. So here is my predictions for the amounts of snow. It's not going to let me full screen it, but that's okay. You can kind of see across the board. It's really interesting. You have 18 to 24 inches in the areas that I've mentioned, especially right along that border area of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. You have 12 to 18 inches of snow, as you can see, spread across into places like Connecticut, Rhode Island, into Cape Cod areas. And you can also notice what I mentioned before with how the GFS and the NAM, well, not the NAM, just the GFS. The GFS already picked up that Long Island is, might not get as much precipitation as we all thought. And that's what I was kind of originally forecasting, that, some parts of Long Island might get some snow, some parts may not. And then, obviously I've been pretty adamant that anywhere along the coast of Connecticut and Rhode Island, you guys are going to get 12 to 18 inches of snow. And that hasn't really changed a whole lot. But, honestly, it's more or less the fact that some of these higher elevation areas can get more snow and be able to probably become more or less a whiteout. There's some instances where the winds could swirl in upwards of 35 miles per hour, especially if you get closer to the coast. If you get closer to the coast, that's where it can actually get worse. Because you're closer to the low, and there isn't as much friction due to the fact that there isn't a lot of hills and mountains. But definitely something to keep in mind as you continue to monitor this. One thing that I do want to make a note of is that I did put the northern parts of the District of Columbia in the 1 to 3 inch line. I do think that you guys could see some flurries, not a lot of measurable precipitation, but you guys could definitely see some sorts of snow in general in and around there. And I also measured Baltimore in the parts of the 5 to 8 inches, or the border of 5 to 8 inch and 3 to 5 inches. That could fluctuate. That could actually lower as time moves along. But at maximum, I would say pushing it 5 to 8 inches. But 3 to 5 is a relatively good prediction, in my opinion, for places like Baltimore. Philadelphia, this one's kind of interesting. The temperature line is like really hard to forecast around there. So for now, I put it right along the border of the 5 to 8 and the 8 to 12 inch line, mainly because I still feel like it could be cold enough to actually be able to produce a plethora amount of snow in there. And the further north you get, the more colder it will be, as you know, common sense. So it could actually be able to create more amounts of snow. Another thing that I want to point out real quickly, not even relevant to like major populous areas, but this loop right here of 18 to 24 inches, this is just higher elevations. I know this area personally, especially since you have ice. Interstate 68, I believe, is what moves along there through Cumberland. This entire area right here is just a hazard, especially the drive through. So if you are a trucker, you might want to chain up your tires. You might want to chain up your tires regardless if you're driving through this area. And you might want to just also monitor the National Weather Service. One last thing, or at least a couple more things, I should say. I wasn't going to say one last thing, but one major thing is the Interstate 95 corridor, or the I-95 corridor. It's really, really hard to say as to what areas specifically could get what amounts of snow, but it's really going to be on the border of a crap ton of snow and not a lot of snow, especially with the further south you get from the Delmarva areas. So once you kind of get into New Jersey and Pennsylvania, that's when it's going to start kind of ramping up a little bit. And then as soon as you get closer to New York and further up into northeast into the to New England, that is when it will start to really kind of ramp up. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention before we get on to the ice zone is the other populous areas surrounding the major snow. So Pittsburgh, I anticipate you all to get around 5 to 8 inches. Could be more, could be less, mainly because there's a bunch of higher elevations around there. Pittsburgh has a lot of mountains. The Three River City. It's basically just a crap ton. But I would say 5 to 8 inches is a good forecast for now. Albany, I might increase the amount of snow. As a matter of fact, I probably will increase the amount of snow that you guys get, mainly because I did this forecast last night, still with the frame of mind that there was going to be a lot of dry air still up here. That dry air is kind of seeded a little bit, so I might add maybe you all into the 3 to 5 or maybe the 5 to 8 inch mark. But I still like this gap here, like around Syracuse, maybe further north. I still think that there isn't really going to be a whole lot of snow around these areas. But if you get further into the New England, further north into like Maine, you guys could see some measurable snowfall. And then Boston, last thing, 8 to 12 inches. Not a lot of people have made that prediction yet. I kind of saw that as soon as the low pressure kind of veered a bit further east. So I kind of knew that the moisture was going to kind of advect further. The warm, moist air could advect further north. And once it meets the colder air, which will be further north than most people anticipated, you guys can get a lot more snow in around those areas. I don't think the dry air will really be that much of a threat for places like Boston or Cape Cod, mainly because they're kind of already near the coast anyway, so it's relatively moist there in general. All right, let's move on to our ice zone real quickly. So this is snowfall with ice. So I'll exit out of this, bring this over here. I was looking through AWIPs. I didn't have time to finalize my little loop, so there's like these white dots around it. But you get the point that anywhere within this orange line right here, you could have the opportunity of getting some freezing rain. That includes major populous areas like Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., you know, anywhere along the I-95 corridor, as I mentioned. This I-95 corridor from D.C. all the way up north to Boston is going to be a war zone. So it's really one of those things where you have to continue to monitor the weather, and especially since freezing rain at any accumulation is relatively dangerous. You have to, I would highly recommend you don't drive, but if you do, you make sure that if you do get stuck, you do get in a crash, or you do get stuck in traffic for another crash, as much as it pains me to say that, it probably could happen, probably will happen, because ice is so hard to drive in. This is going to be on the evening commute when people can be impacted by this. You might want to have some sort of food, water, some blankets inside your car, just to make sure that you actually could go like a day, or maybe less than that, overnight, without having to leave your car. You could try and get your car out, but I'd highly recommend not staying out there forever, especially since you guys could definitely see some impacts around your areas. I also put Cincinnati in here, mainly because I saw that there was still some moisture in and around the western Appalachians into the Ohio River Valley. So you guys could see some ice accumulations in upwards of a tenth, give or take. I would say take, because if there isn't really all that much moisture, then it will probably just not be as much ice. It'll probably be like non-existent, but still something to keep in mind with that. If you're around Harrisonburg and you're in central Virginia, going down into North Carolina in the Appalachians and Shenandoah River Valley, Shenandoah Mountains, stuff like that, you definitely need to kind of just monitor this, because you guys could see larger amounts of ice, your way. So really something to keep in mind with this. I would say this is a winter wonderland, but I mean, depending upon where you are, it very well could be a disaster for you. So yeah, that is practically a lot of what I wanted to talk about here. I will be making a video and posting it tomorrow morning, so that way the people who do want to hear my final take before the actual snowfall event, you guys will see it tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Mainly, the real reason for that is so that people could be able to look at my video right before their morning commute and be able to just understand or comprehend what all they could be expecting and anticipate, as well as plan ahead what you all could get. So, video tomorrow, 7 Eastern Standard Time. It'll be maybe a lengthy video, maybe a shorter video. I haven't decided all a lot yet, but still something to keep you all updated with the snow forecasts as well as ice. Wind chill factor. So, I mean, there isn't really going to be too much, unless if you're closer to the coast. But allow me to show you all real quickly, because it brings up a valuable point. And I didn't really show you all was the gusty winds. The gusty winds is going to be a really, really big factor here to determine, visibility issues in general. And it goes back to what I was saying, the evening commute. This is where it's going to start impacting a few things, and it could cause some accidents, as sad as it may be. But if you're closer to the coast, especially around the Delmarva area, heading up into New Jersey, you guys could see sustained winds in upwards of 20 to 25 miles per hour. Maybe a little bit less in some other areas that are not as close to bodies of water, like a river or bay or the actual ocean. But you guys could see sustained winds in upwards of that much. And wind gusts are even worse than that. You guys can see in upwards of 45 to maybe even 50 mile per hour gusts. Especially as you get closer to the coast. If you're already on the coast, you're going to be experiencing worse. So it's something to keep in mind as this continues to pass through. A lot of gusty winds, especially around 7 o'clock Eastern. For southeastern Pennsylvania, especially around Philadelphia, along the coast of New Jersey already, and anywhere around Baltimore, and maybe even DC in some areas. But really one of those things where you have to keep in mind these things. I'm losing my vocabulary here. But you have to keep in mind these conditions and prepare for them accordingly. Know around which time, you can expect to see the worst snowfall. Know around which time you guys can see ice. Know around which time, the stuff is going to end. Plan accordingly. Definitely want to keep in mind with all this. A lot of you are asking about the other models, so I'm going to show you all what they say. The Euro says that the winds are actually worse when it comes to wind gusts. Across the board is a lot worse. You can actually, the one thing I kind of agree with the Euro is that you could see worse wind gusts in higher elevations. But if it's lower to the actual ground, around sea level, you guys won't see gusts like this. I'm very confident in that. The Euro cannot exactly predict low pressures that go up the Northeast. That is the one thing that I've learned over the years, and that I still don't understand why people, still use the thing. But that's just is what it is. And there's so many interesting flaws with the models. I'll name a few. The Euro and Canadian model, when they start out with a basis of the beginning of the model run, they use satellite data. Oh boy. See, I live in South Central PA, so I'm getting all of this too.
Virginia. Winter storm.
So they extended it further south. Okay. So basically around DC they're going I'm assuming they're gonna call out for freezing rain. But really interesting. Winter Storm Gail seems legit. I suck at this, don't I? I'll fix it. I don't know why I keep thinking it's Gail. I keep looking over, I keep seeing the G, and I was like, oh, Gail was such a bad storm. And then bleh. Anyways. But yeah, the Euro can't correctly predict low pressures that move up the East Coast. They just can't. And it's really just meh. It's really, really terrible. I'm not saying the JFS is any better, but it's just kind of just meh. But I will say real quickly, with the Euro, I'll put on Kuchera, and it may seem like the weenie model, the weenie thing to do, but here's the thing. Do not use Kuchera unless if it's close to the freezing layer. Unless if it's along the line determining as to how much snow you can get on the border of where the rain meets the snow. And it mainly is because it accounts for more moisture in the air. I can guarantee you moisture is not going to get this far north. I can guarantee you. Now, in higher elevations, you guys can see more snow. Alright, that's just the thing. But, across the board, I guarantee you it's not going to be that much. We'll go to 10 to 1, and it shows you it's a lot less. You still can get 2 feet in the around State College, those areas, maybe further east, maybe further west, but around those areas, it could be a thing, but I really don't. I really don't foresee that. But use Kuchera if it's closer to the coast. That's all I have. Well, not closer to the coast, closer to the freezing layer. That's all I have to say. And then the Canadian model, real quickly, the Canadian model doesn't do you any big favors. Because the Canadian model just ignores the dry air up in the Northeast. And I don't particularly agree with that. I really don't. I'll actually go up to the Northeast real quickly and show you all just the general region. Look, it's pretty bad. I actually show New England there. Boom, it's pretty bad. Indiana could see probably 1 to 3 inches if you live in Central, but otherwise, not really going to be impacted by the storm. Where's Tommy? The video when I was with the car. His name isn't Tommy, but he's doing his own thing. But yeah, I really don't agree with these other models. I think they oversaturate it. I feel like they don't kind of correctly show where the low is going to be, or at least for the Euro and for the Euro model. And it's really, really hard to say for sure as to what all people can expect. If you guys do like the content and you're new to my channel, please be sure to like and subscribe, share with other people so that way they can see my takes. Alright? One thing I will say is that always trust the National Weather Service over people on YouTube, unless they have a degree in meteorology, because they have the final say as to how much stuff you can get. Good Lord, the HRRR just said everyone gets large amounts of snow in northern elevations. I do agree with the HRRR and the cutoff of snow. Maybe not as much for Long Island, but still something to keep in mind. All right, I'll go into questions real quickly. As I eat some things. I'll eat my food. Come in.
Can I have the switch?
Huh?
Can I have the switch? Please. Thank you.
Close the door. My toast.
Hey,
What?
Mom wants you to change out the laundry.
I will later. Why can't you do it? Oh boy. Yeah, it's really, this entire thing is really weird. But I will say this. Video coming out tomorrow morning, and then I'll probably live stream during this event just to show you all how much snow I'm getting. It'll probably be later in the evening when I actually get like the total amounts of snow. But really something to keep in mind. H-triple-R is smoking. Yeah, no, this is really bad. This is oversaturation at its finest. In higher elevations, yeah, you can get it, but bleh. Kind of stupid. So I'll go back to my snow only thing. Do you have full coverage on my vehicle? Yeah, I do, but I don't intend on actually driving a whole lot.
Police!
Oh boy.
Help! Police! Help! Police! Help! Help! Police!
Chippy Neal with the £5 super chat. I think it's pounds at least. I never know foreign currency well, but you all know that. But yeah, I do. I'm probably not going to drive a whole lot, but I live in the 12 to 18-inch zone, so I'll definitely get a plethora amount of snow. I will say that much. A part of me is also saying that because I also want a plethora amount of snow. Like, please, love of God. I haven't had an actual snowstorm over 8 inches in like a good 5 years, maybe more. I can't remember if that event in particular had a lot, but there was a lot. I've been through 2 blizzards though. 2 blizzards at my house. 2010, 2012, both had over 2.5 feet. Crazy. Are you gonna set up a cam so we can see the snowfall? Yep. I'll actually take the camera outside and go out in the snow myself. You guys will be able to see. But yeah. I'll definitely go out there. Show you all what all is happening. I'm actually curious. I haven't paid attention to it a whole lot, but the wind around my area. Okay, so we can actually see around 15 mile per hour sustained winds. Okay. So that would be around from the morning or mid brunch to afternoon and the evening. So that'd be interesting. But yeah, it definitely would be a bit later in the evening, maybe 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, around those instances. But yeah. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to talk about in the stream. I'm not going to lie. Isn't really a whole lot. Bringing up February 2010. Actually, eerily similar. Oh, yeah. Dude, 2010 was crazy. That's when the snow kept piling on and piling on and piling on. And at that point, it had to be where we just kept, like, it was that bad. The snow was like 2.5, 3 feet or whatever. We've actually piled up the snow to form these mounds, and then we made these little holes, these little traveling holes in these mounds. We would just sit in the mounds and take shelter from the snow, even though it wasn't all too legit, but that's kind of what we would do. So it was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy, if I do say so myself. I'm hoping this isn't as crazy, but the child in me, even though I'm 18, about to turn 19 in April, the child in me still wants to see that. Let's take a look real quickly at the overall, at the U.S. in general. We could show you all the current warnings. And there are a lot of them, or at least a lot of winter storm warnings. Winter storm watches and warnings have been issued for the Central Plains, especially since this low that we have been talking about before is going around in there, producing some minor to major amounts of snowfall and ice. Ice is going to be a very hot topic with all of this. Actually, real quickly, I am curious. I am curious. I'm going to go all the way over to Oklahoma. And yep, there's already measurable amounts of snowfall. There's also some gusty winds too, 23 miles per hour in some instances, so around 25, maybe 30 in some spots. There is plethora amounts of snow across the area of Oklahoma City. So something to keep in mind as it continues to just kind of meddle with the U.S. for the next day or two. Okay. That is pretty much it. I'm not going to lie. I got these little stations on here for GR2 analysts, mainly so that I can actually determine as to whether or not some of these systems that move on through, how cold, how warm it could be, and be able to better tell you all as to which areas could get some freezing rain, which areas could get some sleet, which areas could get some snow, which areas could get some rain. And also for severe weather, I'm going to be using this to be able to try and figure out as to which areas could have some steep inflow, warm, moist inflow, and stuff like that. So, anyways, that's gonna be pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. I haven't streamed in a while. I haven't made a whole lot of stuff in a while. It's been, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. So, if you guys enjoyed it, please be sure, leave a like. Subscribe if you're new, and share with friends and family. I'm going to be creating a new server soon. It'll be a nice little professional server where everyone can enjoy themselves. No drama will not be tolerated. I'm just saying that right now. If you are younger than 13, you can't join because it's against Discord's terms of service, and I don't want the server to go out. But we will have college students and meteorologists in there to try and help you all out. If you guys want to learn about weather, or if you want to see my predictions firsthand, boom, you might want to go into the server. It's not open yet, though. It'll be open most likely around Christmas or New Year's, because we're still trying to figure out all the kinks, all the flaws, and whatever. So definitely one of those things where we're going to want to be safe and sorry and make it the best community for you all to enjoy yourselves. So with that being said, that is going to be it. I shall see you all. Well, I'm actually making a video, so I guess you will see me tomorrow morning. Yes. Anyways, take care, everyone. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it.